never ask anybody's question but yours. You're an idiot. And really a disloyal person.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Disloyal Idiots podcast. Christian Guzman here with Steve Haller, and Andy Pregler has returned from the dead, ladies and gentlemen. It's been so long since we've seen his beautiful face here. Andy.
Does exist.
First of all,
yeah,
I'm glad you
exist. I'm a shiny Pokemon. I appear once in every 250 appearances, only if you're in the Viridian Caves on a specific save. Your friend definitely saw me load that one time, but it's not, it's definitely for real.
I could go into some really deep Pokemon references on how rare it is that Andy has showed up, but I don't think there's a faster way to drive all the viewers away from this podcast.
We'll have plenty of ways later to lose the viewers. So.
Just wait till the X-Men 97 takes. Mike Held, this is just for you. Like we're going to dive deep into the X-Men 97 lore.
Honestly, because we're getting into nerd stuff and video game talk, we should just really talk about how, like, the next time we probably all see each other is when we're talking over PS5s during a hopefully connected conference franchise for EA College Football.
Okay. Legitimate question. When I saw that cover on Instagram, I didn't see it in the PlayStation Store. What was your first feeling when you saw the cover? Because mine was that feeling that you got when Syracuse has an open man 20 yards downfield and the throw is on target. That was the feeling that I had.
Yeah, it's the throws in the air. It looks like it's on target, but you still don't quite know. So there's still that wavering of like, I'm a Syracuse fan. There's going to be some worry, but you think it's probably going to be good.
My feeling was the same that Syracuse basketball is feeling right now, which is, oh crap, how do I find $600 really, really quickly?
So we're just going to jump into the Lambkin shit right now.
We might as well. That was a good transition into it. Yeah.
The biggest type transfer of the offseason, who is the center that would theoretically round out the offense, has deleted all Syracuse references from his social media. And the rumor that is spreading, not an official confirmed, not even a confirmed in whisper accounts that we feel credible talking about, is that TCU is going to offer him $300K more to come to the Horned Frogs as opposed to playing for Syracuse.
Come back to TCU.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's complete the circle. I am not wearing the purple in support of the TCU. I'm wearing purple in support of a different Pacific Northwest team, even though Texas TCU is not in the Pacific Northwest. Anyways,
given conference realignment, that's coming soon.
It's all basically the same.
Yeah, Texas is moving to Seattle. It's fine.
My takeaway from this is that this is Steve. I think you and I have been the old men in this group, which is kind of Steve is old 3 minutes into the podcast.
We're back.
Yeah. You and I have both been on this mold of like, let's not talk about the team until they're on the court kind of vibe. But I actually kind of feel like that's where college basketball is at right now. Christian, I'm kind of intrigued as to your perspective here of player movement is so radical right now. This is all hypothetical. It's not even confirmed yet. How do you process a move like this when it happens so radically and so quickly? And that, the answer is that Syracuse might find another guy before, we're even at a point where it's a problem. Like they might get a guy before spring ball opens.
I'm one of those guys that's kind of gotten numb to this entire thing right now, just because it's something that's happened so often. It's something that I'm surprised doesn't happen more, especially given the current state of the college landscape. I think a lot of people, I kind of think I speak for you guys as well when I say that the only way to prevent something like this is to actually eventually get signed contracts into the NCAA, to actually have something like that is more legally binding than just a national letter of intent for these kids, because and this is no different than what Syracuse football had 2 years ago when the Laura Sellers flipped on the last day of National Signing Day to go to South Carolina. So, like at the end of the day, there is not much difference. It's just that this is happening with transfers and people who are already in college, and so many people, like I see the most common argument is when you see four kids doing this, it's like, hey, why would you turn down less money, especially if you're going to a place where you're still going to feel just as, if not more comfortable, since when you're talking about Eddie Lampkin, he's going back to where he started his college career. You'd have to think there's at least some comfortability for him going back to TCU if that is the actual rumor that's going to be true. Now, if he stays with Syracuse, we don't know. That's great as well. But I don't think at this point in the college landscape you can be surprised, especially with all the changes that we've seen in recruiting. Even before NIL got introduced in the recruiting landscape, recruits flipped all the time on the last day of at the very last death. And recruits also break out of national letters of intent all the time. So yes, like I kind of agree with you guys that like, hey, like especially in this volatile of a college landscape, you can't feel totally comfortable until a guy is on campus and in uniform.
Yeah.
So, like, does this kind of suck for Syracuse basketball? Yeah, but can you be really surprised? Not really. Like, if this is what the college athletics landscape is nowadays, and to be naive to think that this is a one-off thing that can't be that this is a one-off thing that is like so rare, and like why would this ever happen? It's already happened. It's happened before, and it'll probably continue to happen until there are some more strict regulations put in onto how players commit to schools given the landscape of NIL.
Well, and it's already happening here and there, but like I don't know. I'm trying to put into. I had a fleeting thought that failed me here, but effectively we're seeing on the football side that these transfers are viable and that working the transfer market is a valid way to do this, which Andy will touch more on what the hell has happened in the Syracuse football program since you since we last left our heroes, after we're done with this. But like, can Fran Brown go talk to Red and say, hey, like, figure this out? I mean,
I have a hot take along those lines. So
okay.
Yes.
The hot take.
By the way, before you continue, the Syracuse Towson men's lacrosse game in the NCAA tournament is happening right now. It's 13 minutes and 22 seconds in the second quarter. Will Mark just made a save. That is the first save made by any goalie in that game.
Huh. What's the score?
It is 6-5 Towson right now.
That's weird. Okay. Is it bad that I'd rather talk about contracts now?
Yes.
So like, even if it's a single year contract, even if it's something, because over the course, there's been nothing that bound schools to hold a player over their 4 years or over their however long they end up there. There is nothing that says they have to actually honor them. We've seen numerous times in numerous sports, people getting walked out of, their scholarships here and there, like, hey, you're not going to do anything and end up in the transfer portal, even before it was a thing. But even a binding 1 year agreement, something that says, hey, you can sign, even if it was something to the degree of a letter of intent. Right now, I don't believe there's anything in the transfer market at all for any sort of binding where that would very easily solve some of these issues.
Yeah, I'm not one to shill for another college football media company here, but like Matt Brown is one of the best reporters at covering this level of stuff, and he has a newsletter. Talked about, it was very funny in the period that I was away.
30 second on this one. We've been chilling for Matt Brown for years on this.
Especially now since he's become the official reporter for EA Sports College Football.
Yeah, I again, I'm putting the disclaimer out there. I am not shilling for him. I am just referencing his immaculate reporting on a specific thing. But it was specifically like, I remember sitting in Spain, like I went to Spain because I had a fancy vacation with my wife. We're sitting in a cafe in Spain getting breakfast, and I get an email about him where it's talking about the end of the non-compete deal. And like, full disclosure, I am somebody who works in the tech industry who has a non-compete that is a pretty binding non-compete that limits where I can go. Matt Brown was the one that broke the info that like, hey, I might have more economic freedom than I thought I would. And it's Matt Brown that's breaking that news for me.
Even better.
But
not just your sports source.
Yeah, obviously, who's potentially breaking my financial freedom source. But the reason I bring this up is that I think that this is the beginning to the college football contract situation where they are looking at scholarships like non-competes. Like, hey, you sign a scholarship with Syracuse, you can't go anywhere. But that's not the way it works. Like, Christian, Steve, I don't know how you were at Syracuse, but I had an academic scholarship, and that was very contingent on me getting good grades. And it took me all of 12 months to not get good enough grades to keep that scholarship. But having that scholarship didn't preclude me from looking at other schools to potentially transfer to because my experience at Syracuse was not what I needed. And I think that this is where a lot of people are looking at the collegiate market and saying, you made a commitment to X. Why are you looking somewhere else? And the answer is that's not how the collegiate market works. Like, not to put Christian on the spot here, but as the youngest member of the group, but like, if Christian was like, hey, the University of Missouri is offering me more money and is allowing me a better opportunity to go broadcast for them, doesn't matter that Syracuse is offering me a 50% scholarship. Like, I will take the 75 or 100% scholarship to Missouri at any point in time. And there's no rule that is saying that Christian has to pay penalties for that. Mm-hmm. And
I could, when I was,
why would we hold a student athlete to those same penalties if they are simply a student athlete? And now we dive into the whole thing of like, we know that they're not actually students. We know that student athlete is a code for something else, but the NCAA continues to say, like, we want to maintain this veil. Right. And the answer is like, look, you can't have it both ways. And it's really frustrating for fans. But at the end of the day, like, look, you either play it one way or you play it the other way. And everybody wants to have it in the middle.
That's the problem, though, is for so long, these schools and these athletic departments have been able to play it both ways. They've been able to have their cake and eat it too. And now that somebody's fighting back against it, and, you know, a lot of these injustices are starting to get righted or like work towards being able to right the fact that these kids, like, we'll go back to it. I played D3. I did not have time to have a job on top of playing football and going to college. There's no chance in hell anyone playing D1 has a remote chance of it.
Not to be the asshole here, Steve, but like, you see that Syracuse thing back there? Like, that is a Syracuse varsity letter for me being a mascot. Mm-hmm. I could not have, like, I had a campus job that specifically the guy who ran the company knew I was the mascot and worked around my schedule for that.
Right. And
I could not have
no chance in hell.
No, I could not have a normal work study job. I could not go out and like work at any of the places. I had to have somebody who specifically said, I know you are a student athlete. I will ensure that the guy that's providing your hours will work around your work schedule, which is my amateur athlete schedule
Right.
to have this job on campus. And again, I want this to, I'm very aware this sounds like very spoiled, like white guy in Brooklyn coming off as, like, I understand how this is coming off as, but like, I think Christian, like you again, you're closer to it than Steve and I were, because we are both a few more years removed from this than you are.
20
But like it's only gotten worse from when Steve and I were in college.
Mhm.
Like, I think when Steve and I were there in college, like there was this veneer of separation that existed. And that at this point has now just been completely shattered, where like, look, if you play sports, that is your full-time job on campus, but you can't get paid for it without NIL.
Definitely. And I think right now that's just something that even when I was in college, there was still like, a fun mystique, you could say, whenever you saw a student athlete in the crowd, you're like, oh, this guy's on the football team, like this guy's on the basketball team, blah, 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 whatever it may be. And so like even regular students knew that like, hey, these are guys that are treated differently just because they play college at a Division I athletic level. And so because of that, it's when you look at this at the big picture, this is where it was always headed.
Yeah.
It just needed a kick. Well, luckily we finally got that kick. And now we're starting to see that something that we kind of always already knew, but it was such a quiet thing because it was never going to be a problem until it became a problem, is that the NCAA has always been woefully unprepared for change. And this is just another one of those big examples of how woefully unprepared the NCAA is for change because of all the seismic changes that have happened with NIL and with conference realignment and with more money than ever getting pumped into the college landscape. The NCAA has thought that, hey, our rules are solid and no one's going to challenge our decades old rules because we're the NCAA. Guess what?
Steve,
They got challenged.
Steve, does this sound like comic book parallels at all? Like, I'm not trying to derail this podcast, but I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of parallels here to something else that you and I really care about, that Christian also cares about. We could derail this entire podcast. Sorry, I'm gonna go back to being on mute.
Well,
like
we'll keep it somewhat on the rails though, because like, think about what it took though to bring even a modicum of that recognition around. Like Ed O'Bannon, the O'Bannon lawsuit started. He played in '95. Like he was on the UCLA 1995 national championship game or team. I can remember watching that game.
Sorry, I was 3 years old when that happened.
Jesus, I hate you. I was in 5th grade. Yeah. So
I wasn't
about.
Yeah, I wasn't born yet.
But like the O'Bannon lawsuit didn't even,
I was 4 months old when the Yankees won the '96 series.
Oh my god. Jesus.
I mean 6, but who's counting?
I didn't think this was what was going to derail the podcast.
Steve, we love you. You're
95 to 2015 for an actual result to have. That's 20 years of like him, having, beef with the NCAA, proceeding to get enough of a case around it and for them to actually rule on it. And it's mildly insane that like, I mean, it was it was probably a couple years before that like Oscar Robertson and some of the other big names joined the lawsuit, but there was like a 20-year gap between when he played and when they finally ruled on it. And it's like, okay, this is throwing everything for a tumult. And now we're finally getting to the back end of it. So where do we go from here?
That kind of goes back to my point of just like how woefully unprepared the NCAA was for all of this. Because, I mean, the NCAA always thought that they were going to have the courts by their sides, I think, and just in general. And now, the tipping point was obviously the California and Florida NIL agreements that suddenly got pushed through. And then what's kind of precipitated all of this, kind of to turn it back all around to where we are, is with all the multi-transfer rules of the recent Tennessee or whatever it was, West Virginia, whatever state this was, of the NCAA not being able to enforce their two-time transfer rules.
Yeah.
Because of all of that, that's where now we're in the situation where, okay, hey, guess what? The dirty secret that has been the white secret that no one has really wanted to say is now true, which is the NCAA and college athletics, especially at the highest level, is more like pro sports than any other type of organized athletic competition.
And I'm not the one to like advocate for, hey, go listen to like this YouTube influencer talking about stuff. But like, there are more and more people like our own Syracuse Lauren Fitzmaurice, or Pittsburgh's own Emily, I think it's Verhagen or whatever. Like there are multiple collegiate influencers who are coming out of the COVID pandemic, played sports during that period of time, and are now, 22, 23 years old, who are talking about how during that time period they were treated like employees, where it's like, hey, the expectation is that you are going to do X, Y, and Z. And their response is like, this is not a job. Like, this is a collegiate activity that I do that maybe might provide a scholarship, but this is not my job. And I think one of the things that is going to change over time, and I think this dovetails nicely into a more fun subject that we're going to talk about here. We are moving into an era where we are done pretending that collegiate athletes do not have a full-time job of being a collegiate athlete. And again, Steve, you knew this better than anybody else here. It doesn't matter if you're D3, D2, D1. Being a collegiate athlete requires you as a human being to maintain a level of physical competence and in emotional / intelligence competence that is not required of anybody else on a college campus. Like it's that balance that is the unique part of it. It's not one or the other. It's the balance that is required.
Right.
And
yeah.
Sorry.
No, it really is, or was. I mean, and again, I'm talking turn of the century here. Like this was 20 years ago that
Steve is old. Reference 5.
When it's not us three together, it's usually a tally of when the Steve is old reference comes up. When us three are together, it's how many times can we do this?
Sounds about right. But yeah, they like it really was a juggling act. And you don't realize it until you're in it, or until you can like see what a schedule of one of these kids is. I mean, it's mildly insane, whether it's weight room stuff, whether it's film room, whether it's on the field, whether it's off the field, whether now with Fran, it's other extracurricular stuff that they're also doing, which ultimately absolutely awesome to see them out in the community and doing stuff and all this. But holy shit, it's even more things they've got to do. And it snowballs into this giant mess that's catching fire, and I don't know what to do.
Thanks, Gerg.
I sense we're shifting into our Syracuse football talk.
We are.
And before we get into that, I had to look into the archives. The last time Andy was on this podcast was January 28th. A full 2 months before even spring practice started. And boy, has a lot happened since then.
Wow.
I would just like to defend myself by saying I have no defense for myself. much like the Manchester United defense. Anyways,
Yeah, we suck. Can't qualify for Europe. God damn it.
To put a bow on Steve's thing, I think I'm not saying like go out and hug your D1 athlete friend that you have. What I am saying is I think that when we talk about Eddie Lampkin, when we talk about any of these players who are moving around the transfer market, which is funny to talk about like the transfer market, like it's like EAFC.
Last week on the pod, we were talking with Kevin, and I said something about transfer window, and then I'm like, holy shit, we have transfer windows. Like it really is becoming the European model.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like it's again they are literally transferred from school to school. Like this is the transfer market.
So we're waiting for the next person who doesn't get their name into the portal in time because they sent it using a fax machine.
100%.
I will guarantee you that will be at Syracuse, and I do not care what the odds are. I will throw the money down on that right now.
Oh God!
I said last week, Andy, that I want to see Red Autry being interviewed with his one hand out the car window, a la
Harry Redknapp.
Harry, yep.
No, the funny part is that you act like I don't listen to the podcast that I'm not on. I do listen. I just don't participate.
You know, in all your world travels, I don't know if you had time to download it.
Okay, fair shot there. The part that I think that we can end this on is that until we are at the point where scholarships are legitimately legally enforceable contracts, this is the nature of the beast. And I see some head nods here, so that means that like we're all in agreement here. So the question becomes, and this is the Pandora's box opening here. I might have been reading some Greek mythology books here. When do we decide, and how do we decide the difference between the private school and the public school sector? Conversation for a different podcast, but it's the idea that, and again, Steve, I think this is an area that you're specifically inclined to potentially answer. You play D3 at a state school where
Union
was private.
Yep.
Union was private. Okay. So actually, this might even be even better. At a public school, the goal is like, look, we are supposed to educate the public. We're supposed to offer scholarships. Syracuse is not that. Syracuse is a private school that operates slightly differently, as Christian and I very well know from our family's wallets. This is where Syracuse operates in the gray area, where a contract at Syracuse is going to be different than a contract at a Penn State or a Georgia or an Alabama, because New York State cannot Freedom of Information Act these contracts. And I'm not asking for an answer here. I'm just I'm just tossing it to you, Steve, as in the example of Fran Brown has really found a niche in offering New Jersey kids, hey, here's this school that's not that far away that is giving you something that you cannot get in the state of New Jersey, which I agree with. Like, biased, everything. I am intrigued to see how this holds up long term.
All of us are biased towards Syracuse. This is weird.
I mean, as the guy who turned down a pretty hefty scholarship to Seton Hall to attend Syracuse, I understand where these guys are coming from. Also,
2 out of 3 of us have legally had a New Jersey residence of address. Like, I just want to make it clear here that like 2 or 3. When I say these things, I'm saying it because I lived in New Jersey for a period of time. And if I don't say that I lived in New Jersey for a period of time, Sean Farrell is going to come out and stab me.
Oh God, that's great.
Yeah, come on. Like, look, see, there we go. Did you miss my stupid jokes?
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
Andy, what did you miss more? Did you miss us more, or did you miss your friends at Home Field Apparel more?
So at my company that I cannot say due to potential sponsorship conflict issues, my boss went to me and said, I don't think that we can offer gift cards. Can we offer Home Field Apparel t-shirts as prizes for our March Madness bracket? And my response was, we can definitely offer Home Field Apparel things. The issue is that everybody is going to like the Home Field Apparel better. And the answer was that they all like the Home Field Apparel better, which is why I say Home Field Apparel. Sponsors of this wonderful podcast. Also sponsors of everything comfortable, cozy. I guess we're entering like that awkward period where, you know what, you don't want a Home Field Apparel set of joggers. You don't want a Home Field Apparel set of hoodies. You know what you might want? That t-shirt, that 3/4 baseball tee that Steve has, that is the Anteaters, because maybe I might have set up a collegiate World Series pool among my friends, and maybe one of those people are picking the winners based off of mascots, and maybe that person has already decided that the Anteaters are going to win the whole thing because the Anteater is the best mascot in college. And guess who? And guess who is the only place that offers an Anteater t-shirt?
Our friends.
Dear friends at Home Field Apparel. Christian, tell me why Home Field Apparel is awesome, aside for all the reasons that I might have slowly... oh my gosh, there it is! Oh my gosh, I forgot about the wonders of our live stream, which you should be tuning into on twitch.tv/newsmagician.
If you're not tuning into the live stream Tuesday on Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube Sundays at 8 p.m., you're missing out on seeing the Home Field Apparel page that is showing the UC Irvine Zot baseball tee, the 3/4 tee,
which Steve owns.
I do, and it's a glorious, glorious thing.
And of course, again, if you're not looking for a comfy sweater or a hoodie or jogger, I mean, you can get one of the comfiest tees or even a cool dad baseball hat as well at homefieldapparel.com. Well, yeah, you might as well, right? Pick up a pair of socks.
Because why not?
Indeed. And of course, when you go to homefieldapparel.com, you can use the code NUNES23, NUNES23, NUNES23 at checkout to get 10% off your very first purchase at homefieldapparel.com.
I love those guys. Connor, they're doing like Indy 500 stuff. Like they're becoming big time. I don't know if I like that. I saw a Home Field Apparel ad on the ACC network, and my wife's reaction to that was, why is the thing that you advertise on your podcast on our TV? I didn't have a good response for that, because I was also shocked as well. But you know what also is shocking? I got a push notification a couple weeks ago that was talking about the 4 schools that were leading the way in the class of 2025 recruiting. And Syracuse was one of those schools, along with the University of Southern California, the Ohio State University, and the University of Georgia. Gentlemen, I present this as a statement that can be taken in any way, shape, or form. Fran is cooking. That man knows how to freaking cook.
That's putting it mildly, my friend. Again, Andy hasn't been on a podcast with us since January 28th. And Andy has missed many things.
Oh, I still follow the Slack. I have seen the names that are coming in, and the honest response that I have gotten, like, I work at a company whose headquarters is in Atlanta, Georgia, and my boss is a UGA alum who is a diehard UGA fan, and her response to me has been, "Did we make a mistake?"
The answer is yes. Yes, they.
Steve, I'm gonna exclude Christian from this comment in a minute. For just a minute. You and I have been Syracuse football fans you have been a fan longer than I have, but I have been a fan for a decent amount of time where I remember the Dwight Freeney days.
Okay.
And I remember being in high school and my high school gym teacher going to me and saying, "That's cute that you want to go to Syracuse when Dwight Freeney is the only guy of note who has graduated from the school." He was obviously kind of being a dick, but forgot about Donovan McNabb and Marvin Harrison, yada, yada, yada. But the fact remained that growing up in Pennsylvania, Pitt and Penn State were viewed significantly higher than Syracuse in terms of college football prestige. I'm not saying that we're above both of those schools right now. What I am saying is that the level of optimism is at a level that I do not think has been available or readily acceptable to this fan base since, I don't know, the 80s. Like, and I mean that very seriously in the sense of like, Fran doesn't need to win 8 games this year. It's more along the fact that like people are looking at Syracuse football and asking the question of, oh crap, are they the Northeast football school?
Yeah. And Christian has a very, very interesting thing going on right now on the screen. Again, if you're not watching the live stream, tune into YouTube or Twitch. I think also Twitter for some reason. That's a thing.
Yes. Mhm.
Whatever. I haven't been on there in ages. The fact that the fact currently remains that in 2025, this is next year, Syracuse has the number 9 recruiting class in the country. 9. Number 9. Yeah.
9. Number 9.
So for anyone who can't see, Christian is circling a school that you may have heard of. They may have won a couple of football games these past 2 years. The Georgia Bulldogs are sitting at number 12.
We may have gotten our head coach from there.
Yeah. I don't know about this.
So for those who are wondering, I titled the podcast titles when we make the podcast, and I've titled this "Awaken from Cryostatis" because I feel like we are doing that traditional science fiction trope with Andy right now, where Andy's awoken from the coma after a long cryostasis period. It's 100 years into the future, and Steve and I are there to wait when he wakes up, and now we have to tell him what has happened in the time that he has been away from civilization.
All I heard is that Kalen Ellis is no longer on the football team, and that is let's let in true Noon's magician podcast form, let's bring the mood down here.
No, but to bring it back up, the fact that Kalen Ellis is no longer with the football program, and potentially from at least where we're sitting, that not being a really, really big deal. You tell that to us 3.
It is a big deal. Kalen Ellis is not a small human.
Okay, sure. But in terms of not physical size, the Kalen Ellis, you tell that to us 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And we're like, what?
To quote one Mikel Arteta, your greatest potential is availability, and that man did not necessarily have the highest potential in terms of availability.
Well, this is true.
To quote Christian's former head coach, Louis Van Gaal, what is this world twisted?
I appreciate everything that just happened here. For those that are not European soccer fans, you have now entered the part of the show where you can basically skip to every recap of the show notes and call it a day. That's all you need to know.
So we lost Ellis. We've gained umpteen different tackles and guards at this point.
I mean, I again, just telling it up, since the spring game alone, Syracuse has brought in 4 transfers, and I think maybe 5 or 6 recruits for 2025. Since the spring game alone, There was a player from 26 who committed during the spring game. Again,
that's nuts. That's insane.
Because again, we haven't had Andy to talk about this, but this is again
No.
this is the unprecedented level that we're here with Fran Brad. As I kept on saying whenever we brought this up in past podcasts, when was the last time a Syracuse coach got a commit, let alone 19 of them, during spring ball?
I host another show on the Fans First Sports Network with my buddy Big G. It's the Level Up podcast. You should listen to it. Subscribe to the college football feed on FFSN. But we talk about college football at a more broader sense. As you can tell, Steve, Christian, and I all watch games that aren't Syracuse games. Shocker. We like college football. Weird thing here for a college football podcast that we watch games that aren't just Syracuse. But one of the weirdest things that has transpired is that he is like buried in the Ohio State territory. And obviously the Kyle McCord thing leads to some Syracuse overlap there. But he's a big recruit guy. And he just like one day texted me out of the blue and was like, dude, why is Syracuse in on all these guys? And my response was like, I don't have a good answer for why. I have a good answer for how.
Yeah.
And then the why turned out that like we can get these guys. And I think that this is something that like Steve, you and I, and like John way back in the day with Dan used to talk about all the time is like, shoot your shot. Like the fact that Syracuse so often chose not to take a chance on some of these kids showed a certain, like, not to quote many soccer coaches here, but it showed a certain mentality. It showed a certain mentality that we had where we did not feel like we were big time. And Fran came in and immediately shifted this mentality. And again, not to put you on the hot seat again, Steve, but like, dude installed two-a-days at like 5 a.m. in the morning when it's cold in Syracuse. Mm-hmm. And that is some dumb football brain, left brain stuff. But man, that really gets you going. And there's a part of me that like looks at football training and community building and goes, no, that's kind of what you need to do here. If you want to be taken seriously, you need to act seriously.
Change a mindset like that. That's how you do it. You go
cast your mind back to 2 months ago. Fran got 3 commits. One of them being Steve's new favorite player, Byron Washington, the huge offensive lineman from Texas.
Yeah.
And all 3 of those commits committed on a Sunday, the day after they visited Syracuse on a Saturday, when Syracuse was covered with 4 feet of snow that day.
Yeah. This man is a miracle worker. Right now, for the record, they have 9 offensive linemen coming in. So you can see why Kalen Ellis is not hanging around right now. That's just the class of 24. Pregler, I don't know if you saw the class of 26 yet. And for the record, we do have offers out in 27 still.
I love Fran so much.
Actually, I think we might have a 28 out now. But
we definitely, like when Mike and I were visiting spring practices, first of all, again, the revolutionary factor of having multiple recruits at spring practices, not just the spring game, the spring practice
and
is amazing.
Multiple of you guys at spring practices.
Well, yes, but also those guys weren't just 25s. There were 26s, 27s, and yes, 28s who were at those practices.
But Andy, have you seen the quality of the class of 2026 at this point?
I have, because there was a conversation that was happening at my work of who is the booster that is sponsoring Syracuse and how do we get him to insert SEC school? And my response was, y'all do not know how disorganized this stuff is to know that this has nothing to do with the amount of money that we are throwing around. This has everything to do with Fran effing Brown.
Yeah. So you see these 3 guys that are committed. The lowest composite is Deontay Sheffy, who I can't remember what his actual composite is. But
I'm pulling that up right now. It is a 90.35, which is around the same area as Jamie Tremble is right now.
right. So my question to you, Pregler, is, and I have the receipts here. If you were to guess what rank all time Isaiah Williams, the top rated of these, is for Syracuse, where would you say? He's currently a 9.9839 composite.
My gut would be to say like he's in like 25, but I think what you're going to tell me is that he's going to be like top 5 all time. Number 3. There we go.
So number 1 was Cecil Howard, number 2 was Johnny Morant, and number 3 is Isaiah Williams, currently committed.
Because those names are names that, you just think of immediately when you think of Syracuse greats,
Right.
Those.
The next guy down on the list is Demetri Samuel, who's a 9666. Where do you think he sits? This is a fun little game.
I'm gonna say that he sits number 5.
4. 5 if you include Kyle McCord's ranking coming out of high school, but I'm not. I'm going strictly high school ratings. Now, the worst player, quote unquote, in that class currently, Deontay Sheffy, 0.9035. Where do you think he is?
He is no lower than 7th.
He is 10th. So all 3 of the 2026 recruits are top 10 recruits. All time at Syracuse. All
guys.
And did you wait? Hold on. Did you pull that back up, Christian? Did you see where Deontay Sheffy is from?
I did not. I did not.
Take a look.
Oh.
What I am circling for those who are watching on the live stream is that he is from State College, Pennsylvania.
Oh, we are doing the thing that they do not take kindly to. And I don't mean that in like any other way other than like
we're coming
like
in their yard and we are stealing
when Pitt does that, they throw a conniption and there are thought pieces and think pieces written. And now Syracuse is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that, like, behind me, that my dog almost ran away from me in State College, PA, which is like one of my favorite random stories of all time. It is clear that those in State College just want to get the hell back up to Syracuse. That's the moral of the story here. That is, you're born in State College. You go, I gotta go north. I gotta go north 180 miles, and I gotta get back up. Got to get back up to the great Salt City. No, and
again, let's cast your mind back, Andy, to previous Syracuse regimes. When, again, we're talking about 3 players who have committed into the class of 2026. That's 2 years away. And from my personal knowledge, I'm going to keep people reminding of this because this is the new world we live in with Syracuse football. The only Syracuse player I can remember being committed to the Orange 2 years out to him joining on campus is Tommy DeVito. And that's it.
There's a part of me that looks at what Fran is doing and is in legitimate awe. Like level to like what not to create this like comparison that Steve is gonna love. This feels like X-Men 97. Like we have just picked it up out of the blue from what we were doing in like the mid 90s and said, hey, let's just pretend that everything in the middle didn't happen. And let's just like, hey, guess what? What if we just continued it? What if we just pretended like, hey, the X-Men are the biggest comic book group in the world? What if we just pretended like Syracuse was still one of the predominant biggest powers in college football? What if we pretended like it didn't matter where you were recruited from? You just take guys from your backyard who are 5 stars. It is
Well, I guess
I know that.
that analogy is absolutely perfect. But the thing is, like, I thought when Franz started doing this and started grabbing some of his Georgia kids and started like doing whatever, I'm like, all right, he's got Syracuse cosplaying as like a decent program. Like we might get some solid kids. And then he just started going off on kids he didn't have ties to. And that's the thing, is when it gets past that 24 and 25, like, okay, you might have had contact with him at Georgia and he's bringing him here or whatever. Like when you're getting into 26s, 7s, 8s, like there's no chance in hell he had in-depth conversations with all of these kids prior to becoming the head coach at Syracuse. And you're like, all right, he's not, this isn't a fluke that he's just carrying over from Georgia. There's gas in the tank. Like he is going.
It's the X-Men 97. Like, oh, we thought it was just gonna be, like Forge and Mr. Sinister.
Nostalgia trip. Okay, cool.
Now all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, you're pulling in this character, you're pulling in that character. Oh, this is the best. Like, you are playing with fire here. Like, and the best part is, like, it would be one thing if Fran was pulling in a kid from like Boston who was like a 2 or 3 star. Like, he is much like X-Men 97. Wait, he got like one of the best out there, and now everybody's kind of looking around being like, wait, Syracuse might be a thing. Again, I referenced the CSPN article where there were 4 schools mentioned as who is leading the charge in the class of 2020, 2026.
Yep.
And it is the University of Southern California, the University of Ohio State, the University of Georgia, aka the dynasty that we are all aspiring to be, and Syracuse. Like, it is. We're not talking about like being good. Fran has us in the conversations of everybody looking around and being like, no, they're in the converse. Not that we're going to be great, but he is doing the foundational level stuff that you do to be great. And right. I never thought, and I mean this very seriously, like all joking aside, I did not think that the Syracuse infrastructure could support somebody who wanted to do that. And I am genuinely amazed that is happening.
Yeah, that's 100% it. And the fact that he's able to either convince people or just do it, like ask forgiveness rather than permission. Like he shot his shot with all these recruits and is actually following up with them. And that's insane. And it's working. And I'm all for it. And if they can translate half of what they're doing on the recruiting trail to the field, which watching the spring game, I mean, Christian, you and I were both there. Mike was there. We've talked about it ad nauseum. I wrote a 1,200 word piece on it. Shit looked different. Like everything felt different. And if they can translate that to the fall, this might be scary in a good way.
And then we come back to where the three of us just inevitably always end up. Again, as we know with this 2024 upcoming season, in relative terms, this is a kind schedule given to what it could have been for a first-year head coach for this team.
Yeah, this is going to be one of the hardest years for me to like contribute to that piece of what the over-under is for our schedule, because like there's what the roster looks like, there's what we saw last year, there's what we saw in the spring game, and then he's never been a head coach. Like we don't know what we're expecting. We don't know anything.
And also,
we still don't know.
And also, remember, this is also without some of the impact transfers, the impact freshmen that he's bringing in. Emmanuel Walsh, Jamie Tremble. And he's also brought in 4 transfers already after the spring game. So this depth chart is probably also going to look different by the time we get to summer ball.
God.
Definition of low floor, high ceiling.
Yep.
I hate everything about that, but it's just so true. I will say this. My pivot to our final conversation topic that we hinted at the top. Man, Syracuse is going to be one of the most interesting schools in NCAA 2K25 on EA Sports, because how the heck do you code in this school that has like nothing in terms of all the intangibles, but like has this head coach that's like over indexing on recruiting, and it's like, well, I guess if you play as that head coach, you're going to be like super charismatic and like high recruiting ranking, but like the school itself doesn't have all that stuff, and also the conference might implode at any point in time.
No, but this is Fran is literally living my like NCAA 13 save. He's taking Syracuse, including like messing with the conferences at the time. Like I can remember making a custom conference, and like Fran is just messing with everything. It's great.
Can Syracuse become Bayer Leverkusen?
Oh,
And now Christian has piqued my interest.
Which means again we're waiting until the 2-minute warning that has now been newly introduced into college football to score all our points, because
I mean,
again Bayern Leverkusen scoring in stoppage time.
I will say this: Bayern Leverkusen has proven to be a more tactically sound team that we know that Fran can be, but they did take a certain Granit Xhaka that everybody said was going to be butt and turned him into the key cog to a great team. And if that isn't Kyle McCord, I don't know what is. That
is Kyle McCord Granit Xhaka is a fantastic study.
I have caused so much pain here.
the Venn diagram of people that actually get that reference.
It's Mike Held. It's Mike Held. Mike Held is the only one who understands that reference. I will take it. I will run away with it. I appreciate it.
I love it.
But that's the point, is that we're sitting here being like, dude, I don't know if there is a way to quantify the Fran Brown effect in the game, but we will see. I have confirmed I will be at the Syracuse Stanford game this year. I have a bachelor party that is taking place at a Syracuse football game this year. It is a dangerous thing. We might have to do one of these live in Syracuse that weekend. Yes. Which is a Friday night game too, which is even more dangerous.
Oh, right. That is the Friday night game.
Uh-huh.
So I have a bunch of portable lapel mics and some other stuff. Should we do this live from the parking lot?
Oh, live from Steve's tailgate? Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
We got this.
The post-game show you didn't need, probably didn't want, and probably shouldn't ever happen, but by God, is it going to happen?
Yeah, sponsored by Home Field Apparel.
How many people walking by wondering why you have a mixer and a camera and all this other stuff going? Who are these guys with the microphones? I don't know.
We're Troy Noon. Well, we're Troy Noons, guys. One of them is Troy Noons. You know, the guy with the beard. He's Troy Noons.
Of the same age.
See, the problem is we need Steve there because Andy and I still look young enough that we could pass as Newhouse students still doing a class project.
Unfortunately, the Hispanic facial hair thing has passed on to me where I cannot grow. I can't do it. Mark Sanchez ruined it for the rest of us.
Like I have had a beard since I could grow it because I hate shaving. And it grows in very quickly. I have the literal opposite problem.
When Seabass can grow a better beard than me, that is that's the game that we're playing here. You know, like when can his facial hair match mine? My over under is at 15.5. Like I think that's when he beats me. We're placing a bet on your child 10.5 years ahead of time.
Vegas is good on this.
Almost like I work for the house or something.
Weird. Yeah,
Quick 30-second timeout. Syracuse is now leading 12-9 in the third quarter, 4 minutes in, and both of Syracuse's Fogos have scored a goal.
Christian, within 30 seconds or less, please tell me why Syracuse's lacrosse is doomed to lose in the second round this year.
Turnovers.
fair. That didn't even take 30 seconds.
That
mean-
was 2 seconds.
That was slightly or less.
Towson was leading at half because Syracuse was -6 in turnover differential.
Jesus. That ain't great. That ain't great. But now,
And now they're leading by 3, and that's great.
yeah, I'll take
Okay.
nothing run.
I'm gonna give. We're at an hour podcast right now. I'm gonna give you 55 seconds to tell me why I should care about this Syracuse lacrosse team.
Do you like offense?
I do like offense.
Then you should watch the Syracuse lacrosse team. Number 6 coming into this game in Division 1 in goals per game.
Okay. Will I be hurt?
Yes. This is Syracuse Athletics.
What kind of question is that?
How naive are you to
Jesus.
the Syracuse Orange fandom?
It's been 3 weeks. I went to Spain and thought that I couldn't get hurt anymore.
It's not been 3 weeks. It's been 3 months.
That's what I meant to say. Oh, I don't know how to end the show anymore. What if you end the show?
That will do it for this week's edition of the Disloyal Idiots podcast. Thank you, Andy, for showing up once again. Steve, as always, thanks for being here. If you're watching on Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube, please subscribe, like, follow, do whatever you need to do to stay tuned to these live streams that happen most Sundays at 8 p.m. These will slow down during the off season, but of course we'll pick back up once the Fran Brown era starts up in earnest.
And once I return to this country.
Yes, and once Andy finally recomposes and finds out that, hey, Syracuse Athletics is once again back. If you're listening on your podcast platform of choice, thank you so much as always for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe, leave a comment so that we can trick the algorithm into expanding the Ottoman Empire. And if you're watching the following day on our sister site, News Magician, thank you as always. Leave a comment down below telling us what we should be talking about during one of our next podcasts, or continue the discussion below down there as well. Andy, any final words as your triumphant return to the podcast comes to an end?
I've become a big La Liga fan.
In that case, a la Madrid and go Orange.
La Real!
Oh, God.